A lark was caught in a trap and lamented, "How unfortunate I am! I didn't bring about my own downfall for gold, silver, or anything valuable, but for a mere grain of food I've sealed my fate." The fable serves as a warning about how people sometimes risk their lives for insignificant gains. 252. The Dog, the Cock, and the Fox. A dog and a cock formed a friendship and were travelling together. When evening came, the cock flew up into a tree to sleep, while the dog settled at the tree's base where there was a hollow. As usual, the cock crowed loudly in the night, and a fox, hearing the sound, came running toward it. The fox stopped under the tree and called up to the cock, hoping it would come down. "You're a fine bird," the fox said. "Come down and let us sing the night away together." The cock replied, "Go to the base of the tree and call to the dog. He will help you." The fox, eager to trick the cock, went to the tree's base and tried to get the dog's attention, but suddenly the dog leaped up and attacked the fox, scattering it. The fable shows that when danger approaches, the wise send their enemies to stronger allies. 253. The Dog and the Shellfish. There was a dog who was used to swallowing eggs. One day, he came across a shellfish and, thinking it was an egg, opened his mouth wide and swallowed it whole. But when his stomach became heavy and painful, he said, "I truly deserve this pain, since I thought every round thing was an egg." This fable teaches us that those who recklessly take on things beyond their understanding often find themselves in trouble, as they misjudge the situation and make foolish mistakes. 254. The Dog and the Butcher. A dog sneaked into a butcher's shop. While the butcher was busy, the dog grabbed a heart and ran off. When the butcher turned around and saw the thief escaping, he said, "You may have taken a heart from me, but in truth you've given me heart instead. No matter where you go, I'll be watching you." This fable shows that suffering often teaches people important lessons. 255. The Gnat and the Lion. A gnat came up to a lion and said, "I'm not afraid of you, and you're not stronger than me. You don't believe me? Tell me, what makes you powerful? Your claws that scratch, your teeth that bite. Even a woman fighting with her husband can do that. I am far stronger than you. If you dare, let's fight." The gnat sounded his tiny trumpet and attacked, biting the lion on the nose, right where his face had no fur. The lion thrashed with his claws, but only wore himself out. At last he gave up. Victorious, the gnat blew his trumpet once more and sang a triumphant song. Then he flew away, only to get caught in a spider's web. As the spider closed in, the gnat cried out in despair, "I defeated the mighty, yet now I die at the hands of something so small." 256. The Hares and the Foxes. Once the hares were at war with the eagles and asked the foxes to join them as allies. The foxes replied, "We would help you if we didn't know who you are and who you're fighting against." This fable shows that those who challenge those stronger than them are only bringing harm to themselves. The Sow and the Lioness. It is said that a sow, boasting of having a whole litter of piglets, asked the lioness, "How many children do you bear?" The lioness replied, "One, but he is a lion." The moral of the story is that a single individual who is remarkable for physical strength, bravery, or wisdom is superior to many weak, cowardly, or foolish individuals. Note, in reality, lions give birth to multiple cubs at a time, with a maximum of 6. Pigs, on the other hand, give birth to even more, typically around 8 to 12. 258. The Wolf, the Fox, and the Ailing Lion. The lion was old and sick, lying in his cave. All the animals came to visit him, except for the fox. Seizing the moment, the wolf spoke against the fox. He told the lion that the fox had no respect for their king. Unlike the others, she had not even bothered to visit him. Just then the fox arrived and overheard the wolf's final words. The lion roared at her in anger, but the fox calmly asked for a chance to explain. "Tell me," she said, "which of all these animals has helped you more than I have? I have travelled far and wide to find a cure for your illness." The lion, eager for a remedy, ordered her to speak at once. The fox replied, "The doctors say you must flay a living wolf and wrap yourself in his warm skin." The lion acted immediately. Once the wolf was dead, the fox laughed and said, "It's wiser to keep your master pleased than to turn him against you." 259. The Lion and the Elephant. The lion often complained about how Prometheus had created him. True, Prometheus had made the lion large and handsome, with sharp teeth and powerful claws. He was stronger than all other animals. Yet despite my greatness, the lion said, I'm terrified of roosters. Prometheus replied, Why blame me? I gave you every good quality I could. You fear nothing except roosters. The lion continued to lament his condition, calling himself a coward and wishing to die. In this state of mind, he encountered an elephant. The lion greeted the elephant and started a conversation. Noticing the elephant constantly flapping its ears, the lion asked, What's wrong? Why do you keep moving your ears? Just then a gnat buzzed by. The elephant said, Do you see this tiny buzzing thing? If it gets in my ear, I'm done for. The lion concluded, Why should I be ashamed? I'm much better off than this elephant. After all, roosters are more formidable than gnats. This story shows how even a small gnat can strike fear in a mighty elephant. 260. The Wolf and His Shadow. A wolf was wandering in the desert as the sun was setting. Seeing his long shadow, the wolf exclaimed, Why should I, such a great being, fear a lion? I'm many times bigger than a lion. Surely I should be the king of all the animals in the world. While the wolf was boasting, a mighty lion seized him and devoured him. Realizing his mistake too late, the wolf cried out, My arrogance has ruined me. The Wolf and the Sheep in the Sheepfold. A sheep suddenly saw a wolf and ran into the sheepfold, which had been left open because preparations for a sacrifice were being made. The wolf did not enter, but stood outside the walls of the fold, trying to convince the sheep. Don't you see the altar covered in blood? Said the wolf. Come out, or they'll catch you and sacrifice you too. The sheep replied, Don't worry about my shelter. I'm fine here, and even if things go as you say, I'd rather become an offering for the god than be eaten by a wolf. This story shows that for those facing death, a glorious and honourable death is preferable. 262. The trees choose a king. The trees gathered to choose a king to rule over them. They said to the olive tree, Be our king. But the olive tree replied, Why should I give up my rich oil, honoured by gods and mortals alike, just to rule over the trees? Then they went to the fig tree. Come be our king, they said. The fig tree answered, Why should I give up my sweet and delicious fruit just to rule over the trees? Next they turned to the vine. You should be our king. But the vine said, Why should I give up my wine, which brings joy to both gods and people, just to rule over the trees? Finally, the trees came to the thorn bush. Rule over us, they pleaded. The thorn bush replied, If you truly want me as your king, come and take shelter in my shade. But if you refuse, fire will come from me and burn even the mighty cedars of Lebanon. 263. The donkey and the mule equally loaded. A donkey and a mule were walking together, both carrying equal loads. The donkey, seeing that their burdens were the same, became indignant and complained, How is this fair? The mule gets twice as much food as I do, yet he isn't carrying any more weight than I am. They continued on their journey, but before long the donkey began to struggle. Seeing that the donkey could not keep up, the driver took some of its load and placed it on the mule. As they went further, the donkey weakened even more, and the driver once again transferred more of its burden onto the mule. Eventually, the donkey could carry nothing at all, and the driver placed its entire load on the mule's back. Then the mule, glancing at the donkey, said, Well now, don't you think I deserve twice the food? In truth, we should judge a person's worth not by how they start, but by how they endure to the end. This fable teaches that we should assess someone's true capabilities based on their overall performance and resilience, rather than making hasty judgments at the beginning. 264. The donkey, the dog, and the letter. A donkey and a dog were travelling together when they found a sealed letter on the ground. The donkey picked it up, broke the seal, and opened it. The donkey began to read the letter out loud, while the dog listened. The letter was about food, barley, straw, and hay. As the donkey read, the dog grew impatient and said, You can skip this part, dear. Maybe further down you'll find something about meat and bones. The donkey continued reading, but didn't find what the dog was hoping for. The dog then told the donkey, Throw it down, it's useless. This story shows that different people are interested in different things. The Partridge and the Hunter. One day, a hunter caught a partridge and was about to kill it. The partridge begged, "Please let me live. In return, I'll bring many other partridges here for you." But the hunter laughed and said, "That's exactly why I must kill you. Anyone who would betray their own friends can never be trusted. Those who betray others will eventually fall into their own trap." 266. Zeus and the Two Bags. Zeus gave each of us 2 bags to carry. One, filled with our own faults, hangs behind our back. The other, packed with the faults of others, is tied in front, right under our eyes. This is why we are blind to our own flaws, but quick to notice and judge the mistakes of others. 267. The Shepherd and the Wolf Raised with Dogs. A shepherd once found a wolf cub and decided to raise it alongside his dogs. As the cub grew, it joined the dogs in chasing after any wolf that stole a sheep. At times, when the dogs failed to catch the wolf and gave up the chase, the young wolf would keep following. But once it caught up with the fleeing wolf, true to its nature, it would share in the spoils before returning to the shepherd. And if no outside wolf came to steal, the young wolf would secretly kill a sheep itself and feast on it alongside the dogs. Eventually, the shepherd, noticing the pattern and realizing the truth, hanged the wolf from a tree and put an end to its betrayal. This fable shows that an evil nature cannot be nurtured into goodness. 268. The Fox and the Snake. A fox saw a snake lying stretched out and admired its length. Wishing to be just as long, the fox lay down beside the snake and tried to stretch itself. But as it forced itself too much, it ended up tearing apart. This is what happens to those who compete with their betters. They destroy themselves before they can ever reach them. 269. The Stag, the Horse, and the Man. A horse and a stag once lived in the same meadow, but the stag kept ruining the grass and muddying the water. The horse grew angry and wanted revenge, so he went to a hunter and asked for help. The hunter agreed but said, "I can only help you if you wear a bridle and let me ride you." Blinded by rage, the horse accepted. The hunter climbed onto his back, defeated the stag, and led the horse to his stable. From then on, the horse was no longer free. He had become the hunter's servant. 270. The Stake and the Wall. A wall was being torn apart by a stake and cried out, "Why are you ripping into me? I've never done anything to harm you." The stake replied, "It's not my fault. Blame the one behind me. He's the one driving me in so hard." 271. Winter mocked Spring, criticizing her for the fact that as soon as she appeared, no one could stay still. Some people go to the meadows or the woods, others like to gather flowers and lilies, or perhaps to admire a rose, spinning it in the air or twining it in their hair. Some even board ships and cross the sea to meet new people. No one worries about the winds or the heavy rains anymore. "I resemble a dictator or a despot," Winter said. "I command everyone to look down at the ground, not the sky. I frighten them, make them tremble, and sometimes force them to stay indoors all day." Spring replied, "Indeed, that is exactly why people would be happy to see you go. But even just hearing my name brings them joy. By Zeus, there is no name more pleasant than mine. That's why they remember me fondly when I am gone and give thanks when I return." 272. The Man and the Flea. A man finally caught a flea that had been bothering him terribly. He shouted at the flea, "Who do you think you are, feeding on all the limbs of my body, eating me up as you please?" The flea responded, "That is how we live. Please don't kill me. I cannot do you much harm." The man laughed at the flea and said, "I will kill you right here and now with my own hands. No evil, whether small or large, should exist under any circumstances." The fable shows that no mercy should be shown to someone who is wicked, regardless of whether their wickedness is great or small. 273. The Flea and the Ox. A flea once asked an ox, "Why do you work for humans every day, even though you are so huge and strong? Look at me, I tear apart their flesh mercilessly and drink their blood without hesitation." The ox replied, "I am not ungrateful to humanity. I am loved and cherished by them, and they often rub my forehead and shoulders." The flea said, "But for me, at least, that rub is the worst thing that can happen. When they do that, I die." This fable shows that those who boast of their words and position are often defeated by something trivial. 274. Zeus and the Good Things. The good things were too weak to defend themselves from the bad things, so the bad things drove them up to heaven. The good things then asked Zeus how they could reach mankind. Zeus told them not to come all at once, but one by one. This is why bad things always reach us quickly, since they are close by, while good things take time, coming down slowly from heaven. The fable shows that good things do not happen often, while bad things come to us constantly. 275. The two men, the eagle and the fox. A man caught an eagle. He clipped its wings and kept it with his chickens. The eagle was very sad. Another man bought the eagle and helped its feathers grow back. The eagle then flew, caught a hare, and brought it to the man who saved him. A fox saw this and said, "Don't give it to him. Give the hare to the first man. If he catches you again, he won't cut your wings." This story shows we should thank those who help us, but be careful of those who harm us. 276. The eagle and the arrow. An eagle was perched high on a rock, hunting for rabbits. An archer aimed at the eagle and shot an arrow. The arrow pierced the eagle's body, and the eagle, turning to look at the shaft, noticed that the feathers on the arrow were his own. He said, "This is a bitter sorrow for me, to die by the very feathers that belong to me." This story shows that the greatest pain comes when one is betrayed by their own. 277. The nightingale and the swallow. A swallow once spoke to a nightingale, asking her to share a roof and dwell together, just like herself. The nightingale, weeping, replied, "I cannot do this thing you ask, for I recall the suffering of my past misfortunes. That is why I shall make my home in the wilderness." This fable shows that when someone has been hurt by misfortune, they wish to avoid the place where that sorrow occurred. Note, in Greek mythology, the story of the nightingale is known for its tragic themes of love and vengeance. Procne, the princess of Athens, married Tereus, the king of Thrace, and they had a son named Eetes. When Procne longed for her sister Philomela, Tereus went to fetch her, but he raped Philomela and cut off her tongue, locking her away in the forest. Philomela, in her misery, wove the story of her ordeal into a tapestry and sent it to Procne. In anger, Procne took revenge by killing her son Eetes and feeding him to Tereus. When Tereus learned the truth, he sought to kill the two sisters, but the gods transformed them into birds. Procne became the nightingale, forever lamenting, calling out, "Eetes, Eetes," while Philomela was transformed into a swallow. Tereus became a hawk, relentlessly chasing them. Due to this tragic story, the nightingale's song in Greek mythology became a symbol of deep sorrow and regret. 278. The Athenian and the Theban. An Athenian and a Theban were travelling together and began discussing heroes. Their conversation turned into a heated debate. The Theban praised Heracles, son of Alcmene, as the greatest of all men, now counted among the gods. The Athenian disagreed, arguing that Theseus was far greater, for he had been blessed with divine fortune, while Heracles had endured slavery. Being a skilled speaker, the Athenian won the debate. The Theban, unable to match his eloquence, finally conceded and said, "Fine, you win, but let Theseus be angry with us, and Heracles with you Athenians." 179. The goat and the donkey. A man kept a goat and a donkey. The goat, envious of the donkey's extra food, devised a cunning trick and said, "You're always working so hard, grinding grain, carrying loads. If you pretend to have a seizure and fall into a ditch, you can finally get some rest." The donkey believed the goat and threw himself down, only to injure himself badly. The owner quickly called a doctor, who said that a potion made from a goat's lung would heal the donkey. To save his donkey, the owner sacrificed the goat. Those who plot against others bring about their own downfall. 280. The goat and the goatherd. A goatherd was calling his goats back to the fold when one lingered behind, enjoying some sweet grazing. Frustrated, the goatherd threw a stone, striking the goat's horn and breaking it. Realizing what he had done, he pleaded with the goat not to tell the master. The goat replied, "Even if I say nothing, how could I hide it? My broken horn is plain for all to see." This fable teaches that it is foolish to try to conceal what is obvious to everyone. 81. The two roosters and the eagle. Two roosters were fighting over some hens. One rooster defeated the other. The defeated rooster retreated to a shady spot and hid. The victorious rooster, puffed up with pride, flew to a high place and stood on a tall wall. He crowed loudly. Suddenly an eagle swooped down and snatched him away. The rooster, who had been hiding in the shadows, then freely mated with the hens from that time on. This fable shows that the Lord opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. 282. The Fisherman and the Fish. A fisherman cast his net into the sea. Fortunately, the net was filled with all kinds of sea creatures. The small fish swam downward and slipped through the holes, escaping back into the water. However, the large fish were caught and lay stretched out on the boat. Being small means finding safety and avoiding trouble. On the other hand, those with great fame rarely escape danger. 283. The Man and the Fox. A man who bore a grudge against a fox for harming him finally caught it. Wanting to punish the creature severely, he soaked a bundle of tow in oil, tied it to the fox's tail, and set it on fire. However, fate led the fox straight into the man's own fields, which were ripe for harvest. As the flames spread, the man could only watch helplessly as his crops were reduced to ashes. One should remain calm and not give in to excessive anger, for those who are quick to wrath often bring the greatest harm upon themselves. 284. The Man and the Lion travelling together. A man and a lion were once travelling together, each boasting about their own kind. As they walked, they came across a stone statue depicting a man strangling a lion. The man pointed to it and said, "See how we are stronger than you." The lion smiled and replied, "It is men who carve these things, my dear. If lions knew to carve with skill, you'd see men beneath us still." Those who boast often shape the story in their favour, but reality may be quite different. 285. The Statue of Hermes and the Treasure. A man owned a wooden statue of Hermes. Every day he made offerings and sacrifices to it, yet despite his devotion he remained poor. Frustrated, he grabbed the statue by the leg and smashed it against the wall. The statue's head broke open, and gold coins poured out. As the man gathered the gold, he exclaimed, "Hermes, you're a strange and ungrateful god. When I honoured you, you gave me nothing. But now that I've mistreated you, you reward me greatly. I don't understand this bizarre form of worship." The fable demonstrates that you will not benefit from honouring a wicked man, but by striking him, you will be of greater benefit to yourself. Wall. 287. The Arab and his Camel. An Arab loaded his camel with goods. He then asked, "Would you rather go uphill or downhill?" The camel replied, "Is the flat road closed?" 288. The Bear and the Fox. One day a bear loudly boasted about his love for humans. "We bears don't eat the bodies of the dead. That makes me the most compassionate of all animals." Hearing this, the fox scoffed and said, "I wish you ate the dead instead of the living." This fable exposes greed, hypocrisy, and empty vanity. 289. The Frog Doctor and the Fox. A frog living in the mud crawled onto land and declared to all the animals, "I am a doctor skilled in medicine, even greater than Paean, the physician of the gods." The fox scoffed and replied, "How can you heal others when you can't even cure your own sickly green skin?" This fable teaches that someone who lacks knowledge cannot educate or improve others. Pan in Greek mythology, Paean or Paeon was the physician of the gods, often associated with Apollo or Asclepius, the gods of healing. 290. The Oxen and the Butchers. Once some oxen decided to destroy the butchers, seeing them as their greatest enemies. They gathered for battle, sharpening their horns. Among them was a very old ox who had ploughed many fields in his time. The elderly ox said, "These butchers kill us with skilled hands, sparing us unnecessary suffering. But if we fall into the hands of untrained men, our deaths will be far more painful. For no matter what, there will always be someone to slaughter an ox, even if there are no butchers." Those who rush to escape their present troubles should be careful not to find themselves in an even worse situation. 291. Heracles and the Ox Driver. An ox driver was bringing his wagon to the village when it fell into a deep ravine. He should have helped, but instead he stood idly by, praying only to Heracles, whom he honoured above all other gods. Heracles appeared and said, "Grab the wheels and prod the oxen. Pray to the gods only when you are making an effort yourself, otherwise your prayers are in vain." 292. The Donkey and the Ox. A man had just one ox. He yoked it with a donkey to plough the field. It was poor work, but it had to be done. When the work was finished and the man was about to unyoke them, the donkey asked the ox, "Who will carry the old man's tools?" The ox replied, the one who always does. The Man and the Weasel. A man caught a weasel, but the weasel, hoping to escape her imminent death, begged the man. "Please spare me," she said, "for I rid your house of troublesome mice." The man replied, "If you chased the mice for my sake, I would truly be grateful and spare you. But the truth is, you only catch them to enjoy what's left of what they nibble on, and you even eat the mice yourself. So don't expect any gratitude from me for your so-called kindness." With these words, the man condemned the treacherous creature to her doom. 294. The Crane and the Peacock. The peacock mocked the crane, laughing at the colour of its wings. The crane replied, "I may have plain feathers, but I can fly close to the stars, high in the sky. You, however, are like a rooster, stuck on the ground, never soaring above." The crane continued, "I would rather be admired for my modest appearance than live in wealth without honour." 295. The Farmer and his Mattock. A farmer was digging in his vineyard when he lost his mattock. He searched for it among the labourers nearby and asked if any of them had taken it, but each one denied it. Not knowing what else to do, he decided to take them all to the city to swear an oath. For country folk believe that the gods in the countryside are foolish, while the real gods live inside the city walls and see everything. As they entered the city gates, they set down their packs and stopped by a well to wash their feet. Just then, a herald announced that a reward of 1,000 drachmas would be given to anyone who could provide information about stolen property that had been taken from the god. Hearing this, the farmer exclaimed, "I've come all this way for nothing! How can this god know anything about other thieves when he can't even catch the ones who robbed him? A god, yet he has to pay a reward just to find out if any human knows the truth." 296. The Farmer and the Eagle. A farmer once caught an eagle in a trap, but when he saw what a magnificent bird it was, he let it go free. The eagle did not forget this kindness. One day the farmer was sitting under an old crumbling wall. Seeing the danger, the eagle swooped down and snatched the cloth from the man's head. Startled, the farmer jumped up and ran after the bird. At a short distance, the eagle let go of the cloth. The farmer picked it up and turned back, only to find that the wall had collapsed right where he had been sitting. He stood there, amazed, realizing how the eagle had repaid his kindness. 297. The Farmer and the Cranes. A flock of cranes settled in a farmer's field, feasting on the freshly sown wheat. At first, the farmer scared them away by swinging an empty sling, and for a while the birds fled in fear. But soon the cranes realized that the sling was harmless. They stopped running and went back to eating as if nothing had happened. Seeing this, the farmer changed his approach. Instead of just swinging the sling, he started hurling stones. Many cranes were struck down, wounded and crippled. As the survivors took flight, they cried to one another, "Let's flee to the land of the pygmies. This man is no longer just trying to scare us. He's actually doing something about it." 298. The Farmer and the Birds. At the setting of the Pleiades, when it was time to sow the fields, a farmer cast wheat seed into the freshly ploughed earth. As he stood watch over his field, a noisy flock of jackdaws descended, along with starlings, those ruinous pests that devour newly sown grain. A boy followed behind him, carrying an empty sling. The starlings had learned to listen carefully. Whenever the farmer asked for the sling, they fled before he could strike. Realizing this, the farmer devised a trick. Calling the boy over, he instructed him, "Listen, my boy, these birds are clever, so we must be even cleverer. When they return, I will ask you for bread, but instead of bread, hand me the sling." The birds came back and began pecking at the field once more. As planned, the farmer called for bread, and this time the starlings did not flee. The boy filled the sling with stones and handed it to the farmer. With swift aim, the old man struck one bird on the head, another on the leg, and yet another on the shoulder. The terrified flock took flight, scattering from the field. On their way, they encountered a group of cranes who asked what had happened. One of the jackdaws replied, "Beware of these wicked humans. They have learned to speak one thing and do another." 299. The Farmer and the Barren Tree. A farmer had a tree on his land that bore no fruit at all. It was home only to the sparrows and cicadas, who chirped and sang all day long. Thinking the tree was useless, the farmer decided to cut it down. He took up his axe and raised it high. At once the sparrows and cicadas cried out, pleading with him, "O master of the tree, we beg you, do not destroy our sacred home. What good will come of it if you do?" The farmer paid them no mind. He struck the tree once, then twice, then a third time. But as soon as the blade split the trunk, he found a hive of bees hidden inside, glistening with honey. Tasting it, he dropped his axe at once. From that day on, he treasured the tree even more than the ones that bore fruit. 300. The Bull and the Bullock. A young bull was running freely across the field. When he saw an older bull struggling to pull a plough, he said, "How pitiful! How much he is suffering!" But the bull said nothing and continued to pull the plough in silence. Later, when the villagers were preparing to make a sacrifice to the gods, they unyoked the old bull and sent him to the pasture. However, the young bullock who had never worked was dragged away with a rope tied to his horns. Seeing this, the old bull said, "This is why you never had to work. You, young as you are going ahead of us. Your neck will be wounded not by the yoke, but by the knife."